Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So it says, وَبِوُصُولِ مَاءِ الْمَضْمَضَةِ إِلَى الْجَوْفِ إِنْ بَالَغَ فِي غَيْرِ نَجَاسَةٍ. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us, when you make wudu, then baligh, make sure you put a lot of effort to get lots of water in your mouth, unless you're fasting. I.e., don't do that if you're fasting. So Ahmad comes along and says, aha, my Allah sent me a prophet and told me not to do this. I'm going to do it anyway. So now you do it. Now you gargle and you put lots of water in your mouth while you're fasting. And now the water wasala ila jawf. Now you accidentally swallowed it. So now, did you intentionally swallow it? No. Are you sinful? No. But did you disobey the Prophet ﷺ? Yes. So now is your excuse accepted? No, it's not. Because an-nahi yaqtadi al-fasad. Because prohibition, whether it's for haram or makruh, will imply invalidity. That's not a valid argument, right? Just like when you were traveling sinfully, okay? You were a runaway slave. You were, I don't know what else, other reasons why it could be haram to travel, okay? So your travel itself was not recognized by the Sharia, and now you want to use the travel excuse as a dispensation. It's not a dispensation, okay? Because the Sharia doesn't recognize the fact that you're traveling, right? So it's not non-excuse anymore. So it's as if you were not traveling, okay? You were playing chess, which is offensive, and you forgot to pray dhuhr. You say, well, why did you forget to pray dhuhr? Oh, I was playing chess. Yeah, but I said don't play chess. So that was as if it wasn't there. So therefore, it's not an excuse. When it's no longer excuse, now you've now missed the prayer for no excuse. So now you're sinful. So you're not actually sinful because you didn't remember, but you have to make up the prayer immediately. Okay, now you have to make up the prayer immediately, right? So something that is directly caused by something that is forbidden, meaning it's haram or makruh, is not recognized. It's not recognized, right? So if it's not recognized, it's not going to be a valid excuse. It's not going to be this. It's not going to be that, right? We have a debate. Can you pray after Asr or after Fajr, right? One position says it's haram. The other position says makruh. But both agree that if it was haram, the prayer would be invalid. And if it was makruh, the prayer would be invalid because they're both not accepted by the Sharia. So either way, it's haram, right? It's haram either way. But just technically, how did they get there, right? Because so prohibition, whether it's makruh or haram, tells us that's invalidity. It's not a valid excuse. Okay, so it's as if you intentionally swallowed the water, and so your water is now broken. It's not excused anymore. Your fasting is now broken. It's that accidental swallowing of the water is not excused anymore. Okay. في غير najasa, unless it was najasa, because you were told to do that, right? You just threw up, you gargle with water. You just bit your lip and there's blood in your mouth, you gargle with water, right? Because now you're being asked to purify your mouth. That's something else. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So he says, وَبِغَيْرِ مُبَالَغَةٍ مِضْمَضْمَضَةٍ لِتَبَرُّدٍ أَوْ رَابِعَةٍ. Okay, or you did not swish the water around a lot into your nose or into your mouth. Okay, but you put water into your mouth لِتَبَرُّد in order to cool down. Or you rinsed your mouth or you washed your face, for example, or rinsed your mouth a fourth time. Are you supposed to wash your face a fourth time or rinse your mouth a fourth time? No. So now you put water into your mouth for something you were not commanded to do. Right? You weren't commanded to do this. So now the water goes in accidentally, your fast is now broken. As opposed to you were putting water into your mouth, which you're told to do, and then you accidentally, somebody tapped you in the back, you accidentally choked and swallowed the water. You were making ghusl, obligatory ghusl or sunnah ghusl, and the water accidentally went into your mouth, right? You were washing your face and the water accidentally went into your mouth. You were doing something that you were told to do, so therefore it's going to be excused. But if you're not told to do it, or you're told not to do it, then it's not going to be accepted. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sheikh.
Go ahead. Leonard, you had a question?
And I just saying it makes sense.
Okay, great. Alhamdulillah. And then next thing it says, وَبِتَبَيُّنُ الْأَكْلِ نَهَارًا لَا بِالْأَكْلِ مُكْرَهًا. Okay, so now you had the wrong time. You just arrived in Singapore. Leonard is visiting Singapore after how many years? You've been away for 2 years now?
I was away for about approximately half a year.
And where are you now?
I actually just came back yesterday
Oh, to
uh,
Singapore?
to Netherlands.
Netherlands.
Yeah, I spent 2 weeks in Singapore. The day we had our class yesterday was actually I attended from the airport.
Oh, Allahu Akbar. Fantastic. Anyway, so he arrives in Singapore. He has the phone set for, I don't know, another country. There's 1 hour difference. Okay, maybe Taipei. He's flying from, I don't know where you fly from. Or maybe he went via Dubai. Okay. So his phone is on the wrong time setting. Okay. And so he realized just now that when he was having suhoor, it was already Fajr. It was already Fajr. So he didn't mean to eat while it was Fajr, but he realized it was actually Fajr. Or the opposite, you broke your fast on the adhan on your app, and then you realized this is for the wrong time. You broke your fast an hour early. Okay? So you now realize that you've broken your fast. Yaqinan is definitely now Fajr, or it's definitely you broke your fast before Maghrib. Okay? So if that's the case, even though you didn't intend to, وَلِتَبَيُّنُ الْأَكْلِ نَهَارًا لَا بِالْأَكْلِ مُكْرَهًا, right? So here's an issue, okay? Here's an issue is, did you mean to do that? No. Okay, so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, وَمَنْ نَسِيَ, right? وَهُوَ صَائِمٌ, whoever forgot, right? So we said forgetting and not knowing are the same thing, right? So we said jahal, you didn't know that drinking water broke your fast because you just became Muslim, it doesn't break your fast. Okay, so shouldn't we say the same thing here, right? Shouldn't we say the same thing here that um, that if you that because you didn't know, right? You didn't know that it was Fajr, it shouldn't break your fast, right? It would make sense, right? There's some level of, there's some level of analogy there, right? So I remember somebody asked me this maybe 2 years ago. They said, "Is there any room whatsoever?" I honestly didn't know. Um, you know, um, you know, so is there any room? So I don't. So someone's like, "Is there any room?" So I looked it up, and I found that apparently Ibn Khuzaymah said that. Okay, the Ibn Khuzaymah of our ashab, or the author of Sahih, he apparently said that. So let me just look it up quickly again in the pretty sure it's here in the Rawdah. Okay, so I am not looking into something like Ishaq ibn Rahaway or to Ibn Abbas or Ata ibn Yasar or something like that. I'm looking into Ibn Khuzaymah, who is kind of a bit more in the light of history, right? And so you'd imagine we kind of like know what they say and what they don't say. Let's have a look here. 1 second. So 497. I'm pretty sure it's here in the Rawdah, okay? So I'm trying to find a rukhsah for this person, okay? Because this is what they did. 497. Um, Okay, so it says here in the Ibn Khuzaymah, it says ولو أكل ظانا غروب الشمس فبان طالعا أو ظن أن فجر لم يطلع فبان طالعا أفطر الصحيح المنصوص وبه قطع الجمهور. So it says if you ate thinking that the sun had set but it hadn't, or thinking that Fajr had not come in yet but it did, then أفطر على الصحيح المنصوص. Right, this is the correct position that is explicitly mentioned. وبه قطع الجمهور. The vast majority of scholars do not mention any other position. وقيل لا يفطر فيهما. And it is said they do not break does not break the fast. قاله المزني وابن خزيمة من أصحابنا. So apparently Ibn al-Muzani and Ibn Khuzaymah said this. وقيل يفطر في الأولى دون الثانية لتقصيره في الأولى. So he says it breaks the fast. It's also been said it breaks the fast with Fajr, right? No, the first one, which is Maghrib, because you should have been more careful, but not with Fajr, because you thought it wasn't Fajr yet. So here he describes it to Ibn Khuzaymah and to Imam al-Muzani. So let's try and find it somewhere, right? Let's try and find, let's see if this is even mentioned. So I'm going to pick up another book, like Mukhtasar al-Muzani itself, right? Here's Mukhtasar al-Muzani. Does al-Muzani even say this in the Mukhtasar, right? So the issue is, what I'm trying to show is it's hard enough trying to ascertain what certain ashab say, let alone somebody who is outside of one of the madhabs, right? So let's see if Muqtas al-Muzani even mentions it. Because it's often the case that there is somebody says, oh, so-and-so said this, but you can't find any evidence anywhere else for that. Okay, I'm looking here, Mukhtasar al-Muzani, 82. I can't see it here in Mukhtasar Muzani. Unless it comes somewhere else. So it's kind of like you would imagine that Imam Shafi says something and he says disagrees with that. So, for example, here there's Muzani disagrees with the Shafi school. He says you can break your fast if you start traveling after Fajr. The Shafi school says it's not. So you see that Qala al-Muzani he objects. There's another book, At-Tawassut. So Abu Zayd al-Marwazi, one of the Ashab, he has a book called At-Tawassut Bayna Shafi'i wal Muzani. He's comparing the positions. Allahu Alam. So what I'm trying to say is, and I'm going to check also with Ibn Khuzaymah. Check with Ibn Khuzaymah. He talks about it in his Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah. What was the issue was fasting. So key thing with Sahih Ibn Khuzaymah, most of it hasn't reached us. So um, here we go. 956. Let's see if it's here. 956 in Ibn Khuzaymah. So he says باب ذكر الفطر قبل غروب الشمس إذا حسب الصائم أنها قد غربت. Here he mentions it. قال أبو بكر Ibn Khuzaymah So he says, فإذا أفطروا والشمس عندهم قد غربت ثم بان أنها لم تكن غربت كقول عمر والله ما نقضي ما يجانفنا من الإثم. Yeah, so here we go. It's there, right? It is there as an ikhtiyar. But what I'm trying to say is, trying to find out what they mean, and the ikhtiyarat of the ashab is hard. So how should it be then? Trying to find these things and prove these things is difficult. How should it be? How should it be with a fatwa of a Sahabi tabi'i? So when somebody comes along and says, I want to follow the fatwa of Sayyidina Ali, well, I don't know what the fatwa of Sayyidina Ali is. You know? Does that make sense? So I have no problem with you giving fatwa or anything, that's fine. But the issue is, how do you even know what that is? Right? So it's hard to find that. So I wasn't able to find that with the Muzani. Right? Allahu alam. Okay. He says, La bil akli mukrahan. What if you were forced to eat? So he says, La bil akli ay muftir ay مكرها فلا يفطر به إلا الجماع كما مر. So the issue then, what about being forced to have intercourse? So a man was forced to have intercourse. How can you actually be forced to have intercourse as a man? Right? So it's not really possible, right? So it says, نعم, however, شرط عدم الفطر بالإكراه ألا يتناوله لشهوة نفسه. So I put a gun to your head, I say, eat this donut, or I'll kill you. I'm like, oh yeah, I love donuts. Yum, 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 right? بل لداعي الإكراه لا غيره, right? Rather because you're being forced, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ. Whoever's forced, not wanting to do it, and not going over. So you didn't eat any more than you had to in order to save yourself from being killed, right? And then then it doesn't break your fast, right? And then a useful thing as well is وَيَجُوزُ اعتماد خبر عدل أو فاسق اعتقد صدقه بالغروب وبالأولى في بقاء الليل. So you Google on your app NASA timeanddate.com, whatever it is, something, and it says you know, and it says it's sunrise is at this time, sunset is at dawn is at this time. You can do that. So you can rely on a fasiq or a kafir. اعتقد صدقه بالغروب, that who you believe. As long as you're confident in it, that's fine. Right? They don't have to be a Muslim. Right? Okie dokie. Make sense, inshallah?
Yes.
Okay, so it says والخامس والسادس والسابع الإسلام والنقاء عن الحيض والنفاس والعقل في جميع النهار ولا يضر الإغماء والسكر إن أفاق لحظة في النهار. Right? So we have 3 levels: sleep, being under general anesthetic, being drunk, being affected by drugs, being knocked out, and then the 3rd level is insanity. Okay? So you have to be Muslim, you have to be pure from menstruation or nifas, postnatal bleeding. Okay? And you have to have al-aql fi jami' an-nahar. So if you lose your aql for 1 second, the fast doesn't count. Right? May Allah protect us. So it says, فَلَوْ ارْتَدَّ, you left Islam, أو حاضت, أو نفست, I think it's نفست with a dhamma, أو جُنَّ وَلَوْ لحظة, for a second, بطل صومه كصلاة. Right? Just كذا لو ولدت وإن لم ترى دما, if he gave birth, لأن الولادة مفطر بناء على الراجح أنها توجب الغسل. Right? So here, giving birth breaks your fast. لكن نقل نقل في الإسعاد عن النووي. We're not sure what this book is, الإسعاد. أن الأقوى دليلا عدم بطلان الصوم بها لأنهم عللوا وجوب الغسل بها بأن الولد مني منعقد وخروجه يوجب الغسل ولا يفطر من غير استمناء ولا مباشرة. أوكي دوكي. Says, ولا يضر النوم المستغرق جميع النهار. If you slept the whole day before Fajr, you made intention to fast. You waited for Fajr to come in, you fell asleep, and you woke up and it was Maghrib, right? Why? لبقاء أهلية الخطاب فيه. Because you're still eligible, right? It says ولا يضر الإغماء والسكر الذي لم يتعد به إن أفاق أي خلى عنه لحظة في النهار, right? So if you were under the influence of drugs that you did not do sinfully, somebody spiked your drink, somebody gave you some drugs, you had to go on general anesthetic. For most of the day, it doesn't matter. As long as you are awake from your coma, from your general anesthetic, from you being knocked out, concussion, from whatever it is, alcohol, as long as you're out for at least a moment.
You said if you're out for a moment, then your fast is broken.
If you're out of the effect of those things for a moment.
Oh.
Right. So Fajr came in, you heard the Allahu Akbar, and that at that moment the general anesthetic went into you, and then you woke up the next day. Did that fast count? The fast counts. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. So you have sleep, you can sleep the whole day. You have sinless concussion, sinless lack of what's it called? Lack of consciousness, right? So if you sinfully got drunk, like you're drinking may Allah protect us or doing drugs before Fajr, then that would break the fast. Yeah. So it says أما إذا تعدى به, you got drunk before Fajr. فقال الكردي فيأثم به ويبطل صومه ويلزمه القضاء وإن كان في لحظة من النهار. وكذا إن شرب مزيلا للعقل تعديا. Right. وأما الجنون من غير تسبب فيه فمتى طرأ لحظة في النهار بطل صومه. Right. So anyway, so he says so the point is you got drunk before Fajr. It says فَيَأْثَمْ, you're sinful, and your fast is going to be broken, and you have to do qada. Okay, and then he says وفي ميم لا يضر إغماء وسكر بعض النهار ولو بتعد. So according to Muhammad Ramli, so Kurdi, who's late Meccan scholar, following Ibn Hajar. So he says here, Mim Ra says, ولا يضر إغماء وسكر بعض النهار, and being drunk for some of the day, ولو بتعد, even if you did it on purpose. So you got drunk before Fajr. وبه قال سين ميم Ibn Qasim وحاجيم Ibn Hajar في شرح الإرشاد. So in his Imdad and his Fath al-Jawad, Ibn Hajar also had that position. بل فيهما, he says لا يبطل صوم غير متعدي منهما وإن استغرق النهار. And in fact, he even says there, he says, basically, he changes it. He says, basically, if you were awake for a moment, if you drank alcohol or took drugs before Fajr and you were sober for a moment of the day, that would count. And if you were under general anesthetic for the whole day, it would still count. Right? So he's saying quite a different thing there. So that's not, for there, he in those books, he has three levels. He has level number 1, which is insanity. Any moment of insanity breaks the fast. Level number 2, sinful intoxication or sinful concussion or sinful lack of interact. So that means as long as you are awake for some point, that's fine. and then sleep and permissible loss of conscious. That's the whole day is fine. Right, so it's a different breakdown there. Does that make sense? So that here what we have in our book, which seems to be in the Mu'tamad, is level 1 is insanity, level 2 is permissible, so insanity and impermissible loss of intellect. That's level number 1. Any moment of that will break the fast. Level number 2 is permissible loss of intellect. So under general anesthetic, concussion, whatever it is. That's fine as long as you're sober or / awake for 1 moment of the day. And then you have sleep. The way he breaks it down in the Fath al-Jawad and the Imdad, Ibn Hajar says, بل فيهما لا يبطل الصوم غير متعدي منهما وإن استغرق جميع النهار. He has insanity, then he has sinful lack of consciousness, and then unsinful, which is sleep and permissible loss of conscious. So that's third level. So that means you were under general anesthetic from before Fajr until Maghrib, but you intended before that to fast, it counts. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right. So now if you look at that question on the question on the question today was on the Q&A. Where is this Q&A? See, on the Q&A, someone asked a question about, where is it? They said surgery under general anesthesia, right? Can everybody see that? In the SFD Islam QA. Ramiz Qudsi, it was today at, I don't know what time it was.
I see it now.
Maybe it was yours today, right? So it says, so anesthesia is not significant for us. Surgery does not break the fast, right? IV does not break the fast either by default, because it's going through your veins, not going through your mouth or nose, right? So I looked at this question, I'm like, what's going on here? Like, so I was about to answer it. I was like, I don't know, just maybe pause a little bit. Maybe there's some, because I in the Islam QA, I try and answer in a kind of more general way. So I got to see what maybe the Hanafis say, what the Maliki say, what's going on, like But the Shafis are like following Ibn Hajar in the Imdad and the Fath al-Jawad. It's fine. I mean, you could be under general anesthetic for the whole time. Doesn't matter. So it's not even an issue of choosing when to do the operation. Be like, I don't see what's the issue. What's the connection between you could imagine that they're going to say take this medication. Oh, that's different. You're going to have to drink. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to do that. They have to put a tube down your throat. Okay, right. But even so, you're sick, right? So, like, it's not like you chose to be sick. So you should be able to, if you're sick, you should be able to do the operation whenever you want. Allahu Alam. But many of these issues are not issues for us. General anesthetic and stuff like that. It's not. Allahu Alam. Go ahead, Badr.
So yeah, of course, if you're sick and you need the surgery, then you're excused. But what if it's what if it's something like it's a surgery you need, you could technically delay it, but the doctors are, because of availability and issues like things
Yeah,
like
so
this,
I don't know. I held back because I held back from answering and I could research more, but it just sounds a bit funny to me. It seems like like you can travel whenever you want, right? Like you want to go to the Maghrib,
generally, yeah.
right? You can just
Hmm.
travel. Like I don't have to oh, do you have to travel? It's like no, I have a reason to travel. So the reason that allows you to break your fast is the sickness. You didn't choose to get sick today. So now the result is, oh, I'm gonna have an operation. So you should be able to do the operation whenever you want. I don't it sounds a bit weird that you'd have to choose when to do it. Even if you could, you know? Like they'll mention it with work. They could say that like you, for example, you need help. You need help bringing in the hay. Okay, you had 20 people working on your farm bringing in the hay, and two of them are sick. So you said, "Free, can you come and help?" Right? So I can come in, and if it's too difficult, I can break my fast because of the manual labor, even though it's not my job. Because the issue, the harm was there, meaning there's mal muhtaram, there's property. This hay, if it doesn't get brought in, it's going to rot, right? So, or something like that. So so they don't say, oh, on the condition. So they do say, okay, on the condition that work could be done later on. That's true. If the work could be done at night, then you can't do it. But it doesn't even have to be obligatory for me to do the work. It's not like, oh, it's my job and I have no way around it. It's just permissible. And the issue is the wealth is at risk. Here's this hay that needs to be come in, otherwise it's going to rot. This thing needs to be done. So it sounds a bit odd to me. It seems like there's no issue whatsoever. You can just do whatever you want.
I see.
Allahu
Hmm.
A'lam. Anyway, I'll research it more, inshallah. Okay. Okay, so those are the things that break the fast. Okay. So again here, case in point, like what is the mu'tamad in the school? So here, if you look at it, where is it? Where do we get to here? He says, so he says, لا يضر إغماء وسكر بعض النهار ولو بتعد. So Muhammad Ramli is saying one thing, Ibn Hajar is saying something else, Ibn Hajar is saying something else in another book. Those coming after them are debating it. It's actually quite difficult to tidy up these loose ends. So now now you're going to make a quote like this. Urwa Zubair said that you can start fasting from sunrise and not from Fajr. Did he say it? What did he mean? Like if I know the difficulty of finding out what Ibn Hajar said, then how about with Urwa ibn Zubayr? You know what I'm saying? Like, who's like tried to find a position of something like, here on my app, I'm going to share my location. And it's just off. Have you ever had that? Like it's showing like the wrong side of the street,
Yeah.
right? So because you've interacted and you've seen how inaccurate information can be, you're like, yeah, sometimes it's like that, like they dropped off the thing the wrong place or whatever, It's like the other side of the road or something, whatever. So like, oh yeah, that happens. So now I'm dealing with a world. I'm like, oh, Ibn Umar said this, as if it was clear, but it's not. You have to understand that how thick the mists of the time are, right? When I'm dealing with fatwa of the Salaf, it's just like this very vague picture. I don't know what's going on. It's very hard to find things, right? And how would you know the information that you don't see? You know what I'm saying? So here, for example, it says one thing in the text, and then it says Ibn Hajar says this, Ramli says this, actually Ibn Hajar says something else in another text. How would you know the other fatwa from that same scholar that you're trying to follow? How do you know what you don't know? When you're looking into the thick mists of time, right? It's problematic, right? It's problematic, and you'd only know that when you start playing with it, right? So this is a really kind of key concept, right? Khair. So then he says, وَلَا يَصِحُّ يَوْمُ So now in terms of validity, in terms of when you can fast. وَلَا يَصِحُّ يَوْمُ الْعِيدَيْنِ وَأَيَّامِ التَّشْرِيقِ It is not valid unconditionally to fast on Eid or أيام التشريق. Right? You cannot fast on those days. So we remind ourselves, he says, لِعَمُومِ النَّهِي عَنْ صِيَامِهَا. Right. So he says, right. So it says,
Sorry, what are أيام تشريق?
أيام التشريق, the 3 days that follow Eid al-Adha.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right. So the 4 days of Eid, basically. So so here we say, why is it invalid? So we say, النهي يقتضي الفساد. Prohibition implies invalidity. When the action itself is prohibited, don't commit zina. Why? That's not a valid way of having a child. Don't steal. That's not a valid way of getting money. Allah doesn't recognize that. Okay? In of itself. Pray dhuhr. Yeah, just worship the idol. That's not a valid way of praying dhuhr. You prayed dhuhr before its time. You prayed dhuhr to an idol. That's forbidden in itself. Right? Not recognized in itself. Because that's not what Allah wants you to do. Right? That's number one. Number two is prohibited for something that is conceptually inseparable from it. For example, the sin of fasting after Asr. Could you find that sin of fasting after Asr in any other action other than prayer? No. Okay, what about praying Asr while showing off that I'm religious? Could you find showing off for being religious? Could you find that in anything outside of Asr? Yes. So if the sin is found in the action and outside of the action, then the prohibition does not tell us this is invalid. But if the sin is found only in that action, only in that contract, only in that act of worship, then it tells us that this act of worship or this contract is invalid. So fasting on Eid, the sin of fasting on Eid, can that be found in anything other than fasting? No, it cannot. Okay, what if I just didn't eat on Eid? What if I was miserable? I'm going to stay home and shoot a dartboard saying I'm miserable, miserable, miserable. Like, is that haram? It's not haram. So you don't have to eat and drink. So it's not a sin. It's not a sin it's a sin that is peculiar, unique to that action. So therefore, to make it invalid, right? The sin of interest is peculiar to debts. You couldn't do it in anything other than a debt. So therefore, it makes the loan invalid, right? It makes that loan invalid. And then we have something that is muqarin, that is simply coincides, right? I stole your water and made wudu with it. The sin of stealing water and using someone else's water, is that found inside the wudu and outside the wudu? Yes. Therefore, it doesn't affect the validity of the wudu, right? Praying while showing off, right? Fasting without your husband's permission. So could you refuse him his conjugal rights in other ways? Yeah, you could just say no, right? So the sin is in fasting and outside of fasting, therefore does not affect the fast, okay? So the Hanafis, they disagree with us. They say fasting on Eid counts. Why? Because it's not sinful in and of itself. So for them, the invalidity is only when something is sinful in and of itself. For us, it's when in and of itself, or something that is conceptually inseparable from it. Okay. Now the Hanbalis, they say all three categories make it invalid, right? Which is, they add some other categories as well. So for example, so for us, if I'm praying Taraweeh, right, and I have qada prayers that I missed sinfully, right? I have prayers that I missed sinfully and praying Taraweeh. Is my Taraweeh permissible?
No.
No. Is my Taraweeh valid?
Yes.
Yes. Why? Because I could do the same sin by doing something else and just sit outside and not do anything. Just sit, have a chat. So you're sitting down having a chat, even though you're supposed to be doing qada prayers that you missed sinfully, right? So the chat, the being lazy, scrolling through your WhatsApp thing, praying, anything you do that is not the qada prayers is sinful, right? So therefore, it's not exclusive to it. So therefore, it's valid. What do the Hanbalis say? The Hanbalis say it's invalid. So if you're praying Taraweeh and you have qada prayers that are sinfully missed, it's not valid in the Hanbali school. No ibadah is accepted, right? Which makes a lot of moral sense, right? Like, for example, Badr insults me in a really, really, really bad way. And I'm like, bro, apologize for crying out loud. And he's like, no way. right? So he sends me a letter with a big check, $10,000. He says, here's a gift for Eid. And the whole envelope says, no way. He's like echoing the fact that he's told me he's not going to apologize. Do I accept the gift? Do I like feel like, oh yeah, he's, I really appreciate it. Like, bro, like you know, and that and it has notes in it. Every single note he wrote on all the notes. The check on the back says all these insults in it. It's like, bro, what are you doing? Like, it's really weird, So you're not correcting the problem. You're not correcting the problem. I don't want the gift. I want you to say sorry, right? So, it's so the Hanafis is a slightly different picture. The Hanafis, what they're trying to talk about is they're talking about you cannot abandon the way of the Salaf. So what is the way of the Salaf? The Salaf, they all prayed their 4 rakahs before Dhuhr, prayed their 2 rakahs after Dhuhr. They prayed their 2 rakahs after Maghrib. So the Sunnah Mu'akkada cannot be left because it is nigh wajib. So for them, it's very different because they see that as nigh wajib. You don't leave a wajib. You don't leave one wajib for another wajib. So they're still going to pray Taraweeh. Why? Because missing Taraweeh on a regular basis for no reason is actually sinful. So it's a totally different way of looking at it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So they put that. So they're not just saying sunnahs in general, right? That's A. B, they also say, which is a position in our school as well, that the qada of a sinful prayer is al-tarahi, is when you like, whenever you feel appropriate. So you missed the dhuhr intentionally, you just didn't want to pray it. Make it up whenever you want. That's their madhab. And that's also a qawl in our school, right? It's not a weak position, but it's also, right? So in which case it wouldn't be sinful to pray tarawih. But, then if you saw the post today, it's like, people, when you meet Allah, you want to know as best as you can that you're safe, right? So you're like, it's Laylatul Qadr, or it's, you could be dead tomorrow. Do you want to pray Taraweeh or do you want to pray Qada? Right? So we know that the Qadas have to be prayed, and many scholars say that Taraweeh has to be prayed. But wouldn't you want to cover your back? Like I can't meet Allah without these Qada. Like, I know somebody, they took like 6 months off work and they did Qada prayers. 6 months of work, just did Qada prayers, right? That's serious. Like I'm dead scared of Judgment Day. I don't want to meet Allah with Qada prayers. So they took time off. They just did Qada prayers for 6 months, right? People did more than that. People did 20 years of Qada prayers, something crazy, right? So the point is, meeting Allah, like, Allah, do you accept me or not, right? And so there's something called taqwa barida, which is like when you're focusing on small things, we're not focusing on big things, Like I come up to you and I'm cussing like no tomorrow, and I say, is this ... this, is it halal? And you're like, why do you care about this one thing that possibly is halal, haram in your food, and you are swearing like there's like who knows what? It doesn't make any sense. Allahu a'lam. Okay, so then he says, ولا يصح صوم يوم العيدين وأيام التشريق ولا النصف الأخير من شعبان, and you cannot fast the second half of Sha'ban. Okay? للنهي عنه ولا صوم يوم الشك, nor can you fast on the day of doubt, right? So your friend has told you that tomorrow they told yesterday that they saw the moon, but you don't believe them, right? Just gonna fast anyway then, right? You can't do that. Whereas if your friend tells you it's, rumor has it, and you believe the rumor that it's Ramadan tomorrow, then you have to fast. He says, well, مظنون الصدق فلا يكون به يوم الشك, right? If you honestly think it's true, then it's fine. So it says, وحاصله أنه مع اعتقاد الصدق المخبر تجب النية والصوم ويصح. So you believe the person who's telling you you have to intend and you have to fast, and it's valid. Right? Okay. So then he says, إلا لورد أو نذر. So the second half of Sha'ban or the Yom HaShek, unless it's a wird, I fast every Monday, I fast every Thursday, I fast every other day, or it's a vow or something like that. أو قضاء, you have a qada fast to do, or kafara expiation. أو وصل ما بعد النصف بما قبله, you connected the second half of Sha'ban with the first, right? ولو بيوم خامس عشر, right? So you did from the 15th on, that's fine. So from the 15th on, that's fine.
What's from the 15th on?
So if you fasted from the 15th of Sha'ban to the end of Sha'ban, that's fine. You've now connected any fast that you did in the second half of Sha'ban is connected to the first half of Sha'ban, so that's fine. Right. But if you, for example, you started fasting on the 15th and 16th, 17th, you say, I'm not going to do this. And then you're like, actually, I'm going to start. You can't do it anymore. Right. You can't fast. You can only fast in the second half of Sha'ban if it's qada, if it's making a vow that you haven't done. You fast every Monday and Thursday. You fast every other day, or you've been fasting since the beginning or first half of Sha'ban. Okay.
Okay, so one question regarding that. Yeah, I heard that if you fast on Mondays and Thursdays and Sha'ban comes in, then you can still keep fasting on Mondays and Thursdays.
Mhm.
But
So
what if you fast on?
So Yom HaShek turns out to be a Thursday and you're fasting, that's fine. Because you're not fasting because it's Yom
Okay,
HaShek, you're fasting because it's Thursday.
okay. So what if you do fast on Mondays and Thursdays, but you frequently don't fast, and it could be because of any random excuse?
No, I think when you say, um, he says word. He says وتثبت العادة بمرة. You did it last time. So I don't know. When he says here تثبت العادة بمرة, it's what you did last time. So I think basically you had to fast last Thursday in order to fast this Thursday, and last Monday in order to fast this Monday. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Allahu alam. So he says تثبت. So that's the default. So basically, when you say ada, meaning what you did last time, or what you did last week. Wallahu alam. Does it make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. خير, inshallah, we'll stop here. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم.